to another Spill Street podcast episode. Today, we're going to discuss a very hot topic that y'all been requesting. We're going to be talking about how real estate can help you become your own bank with none other than my brother Antonio Buchanan. For those of you who don't know, Antonio is a real estate investor in the state of Texas, and he's going to help us digest a little bit of this information today. Antonio, how you doing today, my brother?
Man, I'm blessed, brother. How you doing?
Man, hey, listen, man, I'm surviving in this heat. You know what I'm saying? We got 100-degree plus weather, going on out here. But I think I'm gonna survive today, man. So let's go ahead and get into it a little bit for the people, man. This is a real big interview that the people have been requesting.
Mhm.
After coming out of this cold spell of the pandemic, a lot of people are ready to get back in real estate, but they want to do it right. So before we go ahead and get into it, I really want the people to understand your expertise so that they know that we dealing with a professional. We not dealing with rookies when we bring them up over here to Spill Street, right? So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate investing and how long you've been doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've probably been doing real estate investing for about 7, 8 years now.
Mhm.
I first got into it whenever I purchased my very first property as a primary residence, not as an investment. When I sold that property, I was like, holy shit, this is what this is about, right? Because, we always are taught to like, hey, you should own a home, you should own a home, but they don't really tell you why you should own a home. It's literally like, well, the
They
generation
don't.
before me did it, the generation before me tried to do it.
Just get you
Since
a
now,
house, child.
right?
Just
Exactly,
yeah.
right? Because a lot of people get into it and not know what to expect because it's slightly
Mhm.
different than renting an apartment or renting in general because you do have a
Mhm.
lot of other overhead. And so a lot of people don't understand that process. So for me, whenever I
Mhm.
purchased the property and when I sold it, I received a 6-figure check. And so at
Mhm.
that point, I was like, I need to learn more about the investment side versus
Mhm.
the let me own a home side, right? And so
Right.
that's how I first got into it. And then after that, I pretty much went all in on mentorships, courses. I was attending seminars, you name it. I was flying somewhere. And so from that point forward, my first goal was to be educated in what I was doing so I
Mhm.
then could jump into the game and start investing.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you said that, man. And what I really want listeners to pay attention to is, mindset. When you come into real estate, often, not even just real estate, when you're talking about investing in general, it's a certain type of mindset you have to have, right? So when you got that first six-figure check, you're not the only one, who sold a home and seen a check for six figures or north of six figures or even tens of thousands. And I feel like a lot of times what pretty much determines the mindset of an investor and the mindset of a consumer is okay, I get this check and what do I do with it? I spend
Correct.
it and go do some random shit with it, or do I stop, think, and learn how I can maximize this dollar? And I feel like that's pretty much what puts you on the path to becoming, not just a multimillionaire, but to get you at that investor's edge status. No point
Facts.
intended. You did what I'm saying?
That's right.
But okay, just want to go ahead and dig into it a little bit. So when we talk about becoming your own bank, in multiple different industries, it's not just real estate where you can become your own bank. They talk about becoming your own bank through whole life insurance. We've
Mhm.
also heard the past couple of years, about how, credit restoration can help you become your own bank, especially looking at, the Hem 500 program. Help me out. What's the name of it? Recession
Recession
proof.
proof.
Okay, yeah, yeah, recession proof. Yeah, pretty much. They talk a lot about becoming your own bank, through mastering your credit. So, can you explain what it means to become your own bank through real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I actually explain what I mean when I say become your own bank in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to briefly talk about why you should become your own bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
a lot of the times where we have access to capital or we think we have access to capital, we don't ever want to be in a position where we're single threaded or don't have other opportunities to invest, right? As long as a lender or a person, a private money person is giving you money,
Mm-hmm.
cool. It's all good. You can continue to invest in real estate, but what happens when that pot of money is no longer available? Right? We
Right.
all seen it. We all seen it during the pandemic, right? We
Mm-hmm.
all seen, all these companies make pledges about what they were going to do for the African American community. They all talked about, hey, you got access to this, but when times get hard, how do you create your own money to be able to continuously invest in real
Mm-hmm.
estate? And so
Mm-hmm.
this is the part about becoming your own bank, is that in real estate, there's a multiple ways that you can actually become your own bank. And I do it
Mm-hmm.
through all the main real estate investment strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wholesale, I
Mm-hmm.
also fix and flip, and I also buy and hold. I have a rental portfolio as well. And so what I mean by becoming your own bank is that when you wholesale, it is a low cost to entry. You do have minimal costs to market, to make sure that you line up your buyers, to make sure you line up your sellers, but then you're generating that money month over month, right? So let me give you an example. So as it pertains to wholesaling, to date, my largest wholesale check, one check was around like $140,000. That's one
Mm-hmm.
wholesale check. And for
Mm-hmm.
and for those that don't know what wholesaling is basically you become the middleman. You find a buyer, you find a motivated seller, you assign the contract, and then you get paid off what's in the middle. And so 140 was probably my largest that I've had, but I've consistently done, six figures easy in a month. If that's one deal, imagine if you do two deals. Imagine if you do three deals, right? Even if you did three deals at 10,000 a piece, that's $30,000 that you've covered in that month's time frame, right? And so that's one of the ways that I become my own bank. The other way is through fixing and flipping. I particularly invest in C class neighborhoods, low
Mm-hmm.
income, economically disenfranchised communities where
Mm-hmm.
I'm building up the homes and adding value to it. So I'm able to get these properties for, 40, 50% on the dollar. And
Mm-hmm.
then I come in, I have a lender that lends to me 100% of all of my rehab costs and my acquisition costs. So I'm really in the deal with zero money out of pocket. And I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people don't believe that you can get in these deals now with zero money out of pocket, but it's all about knowing the right people and having the right strategies. And so when I add value to these properties, I have options, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can either flip it for a 50 to 60, $70,000 return, or I can do a cash out refi to where I only take 80% of the appraised value, and
Mm-hmm.
then I rent it out, and then I'm getting money month over month from my renters. And then the
Mm-hmm.
last strategy is buy and hold, which is you getting regular income month over month from renting their property out. So when I talk about becoming your own bank, it's leveraging the strategies that already exist in order to your advantage, in order to have that pot of money to where if you want to go put down 20% on a property, all I got to do is wholesale two properties. I got that 20%.
Mm. Yeah, and it's perfect. We're gonna dig into man, I like what you said. I really love what you just said. We gotta dig into that because you said wholesaling, you said fixing and flipping, and you said buy and hold. So that talks about the diversification. You kind of went a little bit ahead in the interview, but we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna come back to that. Okay, so
Okay.
speaking of banking, right? So for those who may have always been opposed to real estate, investing, right? In what ways would you say real estate investing is not necessarily better than traditional banking, but in what ways can real estate, especially with the tangibility of real estate, right? In what
Mhm.
ways do you feel like real estate can be better than traditional banking methods, such as like publicly traded stocks or bonds?
Yeah, absolutely. So, number one, I will always tell everybody this.
Mhm.
We were indoctrinated with formal education, and I am a proponent of formal education in general. I have 4 degrees, but I also
Yeah.
have a love and hate relationship with formal education because it doesn't really teach us to think outside the box, right?
Right.
It teaches us to become robots. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give you a question and you regurgitate that answer back to me and you kind of move. But in
Mm-hmm.
life, you need those critical thinking skills. Like you need to be able to solve a problem. The way that
Mm-hmm.
I get to an answer is going to be different than how you got to answer. I'm more concerned about the thought process that it took for you to get there. Right. So that's number
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always tell everybody, why not do both?
Mm-hmm.
We have been indoctrinated to think that we have to choose between something. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if you play football, you can't play basketball. If you invest in real estate, you can't invest in the stock market. If you
Right.
invest in Airbnb, you can't invest in crypto. I
Yeah.
say do both and diversify.
Right.
Now, where it differs at, it depends on your specific use case. Now, I know
Right.
there's a lot of people out there that give blanket advice online about the differences between stocks, the differences between real estate, but it
Mm-hmm.
really depends on your particular use case, right? So let me give you an example. I use myself as an example, right? When I first started in real estate, I worked a 9 to 5 job. I worked at Microsoft for 5 years before I
Mm-hmm.
finally walked away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, where real estate was beneficial at is because I used it as a tax benefit for taxes on tax benefits because I had a portfolio, because I was fixing and flipping. I pretty much depreciated 100% of everything that I could. So all the
Right.
taxes that was coming out of my pocket from my Microsoft paycheck, I was pretty much getting 100% of that back, right?
Right.
So that's where it benefited me. Now, I can use one of my mentors as an example. He also used to work at Microsoft. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
in real estate. He was in the stock market, heavy. He was
Mm-hmm.
bringing in 6 figures a month just from the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Now the issue was is that he was also writing multiple 6 figure checks to Uncle Sam every single year because he was making so much money.
Right.
So that's something that the stock market, it gives you the faster money based on how the market is performing. But real
Mm-hmm.
estate, it's a little bit slower over time, but it's going
Mm-hmm.
to give you those tax benefits. When I talked about real estate and I talked about I did a fix and flip, or I did a fix and then I did a cash out refi, well, the money
Right.
that I get back from the refi is not taxable, right? That's free money. When you're
Okay.
in the stock market and you're making tens of thousands of dollars and then you want to access it, you want to pull it out, that's a 25% fee off rip, right? You know, you getting taxed for touching it. Then you're gonna pay a fee for all the things you're doing. So you're paying taxes on the money that you're trying to access. Whereas in real estate, you don't necessarily have to go that route. And even if you're not making or have a strong portfolio, the money that you are making is going to be used to reduce your tax liability.
Okay, man, I love that you said that. And dang, man, I don't know if you like, tapped into my computer and seen the interview or something, but with the taxes, we're gonna actually talk about the taxes a little bit
Okay.
deeper too. So the next thing I kind of want to get in for the listeners and viewers are the benefits of real estate. Often we hear a lot about people tapping out of the real estate investing when it comes to a lack of supply, high interest rates, inflation, maintenance routine, etc. And the biggest thing of any investment is benefits. And when people run into these type of fears, whether they get there or before they get there, they feel like they're not getting, really any benefit from it. Although, just based on what you was talking about and things that we know as real estate professionals, you get too many benefits. One of my favorite is the tax benefits that we're going to get
Mhm.
into a little bit later. But other than the taxes, what would you say are some primary benefits of real estate investing that people will have as a means to achieving financial independence?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I answer that question, I always have to preference certain things
Uh,
because a lot of people like to blame everybody but themselves and take accountability for the things that they decide to do.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
the word is investing. That means that there's always a potential for you to either make a lot of money
Mm.
or lose some money,
Right.
right? That's in general. Like it doesn't necessarily mean in real
Mm-hmm.
estate, but investing in general. I go in the stock market, it goes up and down, right? Over
Mm-hmm.
time, it has always made money because of how it goes. It's the same thing in real estate. So I will always say that number one, you got to have the right mindset in order to invest in general, because you got to understand the risk that you're willing to take, because everybody's risk tolerance level are different,
Whoo,
right?
but say that again. You ain't lying.
So
Like,
like I know people that invest in real estate where they only wholesale. I know certain people that only buy in B class, A class neighborhoods. I know some people that are more risk takers and they invest in the hood, right? It just depends. So you know what the risks that are involved.
mm-hmm.
Now, as it pertains to the benefits of real estate, I have what you call I call it a trifecta, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be the tax benefits, there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be the appreciation year over year, and then there's going to be the cash flow monthly. Those are the three main benefits, no matter how you look at it, that you're
Okay.
going to get along with the tax benefits, right? And so I always tell everybody, if you have all three, it's a royal flush. You good to go. If you got
Absolutely.
two of the three, that's great. If you got one of the three, it's still good, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody don't invest in real estate for the same reasons. Literally, some people buy real estate because they done made too much money and they need to offload some of the cash to benefit
Right.
them on their taxes.
Absolutely.
Some people do it strictly as a cash flow play. Hey, I need to invest in a property in the hood. Somewhere is a lot cheaper. I can
Mm-hmm.
get it. My mortgage is only $300. I'm making $1,200. All I need is the extra cash flow.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Absolutely.
those are the three main benefits when it comes to real estate, and everything else kind of branches off from that.
Okay, man, I definitely love that. So, man, the more you talk about this, the more it makes me, kind of want to get into strategy a little bit, right? So, when we look at like the strategies and techniques of getting into this real estate things, um, most real estate investment groups or just investment organizations in general, whether you're talking about, a stock team or a real estate team, most of them have techniques that are somewhat similar, such as buy low, sell high, or buy and hold. What would you say are the main strategies that you teach individuals in your program to use real estate investment to become their own bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, the strategy that I teach to any individual is going to be tailored to them. Right. There's a lot of general information that I give, but
Mm-hmm.
then maybe that's like 50%. Then the other
Mm-hmm.
50% is to your specific use case.
Okay.
So what I do and what I teach people to do is how to access and buy properties at a reduced price, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what the market is doing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if it's a buyer's market, if it's a seller's market. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if there's short supply. I will always eat in the real estate game. And the reason being is because I invest in the C class neighborhoods, and
Mm-hmm.
I only buy properties that are, at that 60%, 65% of the ARV. So I'm getting them 65% of every 100
Mm-hmm.
that I'm buying. So there's so much
Mm-hmm.
room that I have, right? Because I've done all three strategies in one deal. And that's what I teach
Mm-hmm.
people. It's about knowing the strategies, not from a textbook perspective, but a practical perspective. I know there's a lot of people that's out here that they teach how to do real estate and they teach how to invest,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really in the field like that. You know what I'm saying? They're not
Mm-hmm.
really in the trenches like that, actually doing the work. Like I'm actually doing the work. Like I'm in the field. I see what's happening every day. I'm talking to these lenders every day. I'm helping out my clients every day, my mentees every single day. And so the what I teach is how many strategies can you do in one deal? Because I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
always have it. I done been in a situation multiple times where I've wholesaled the property,
Mm-hmm.
I fixed it up,
Mm-hmm.
I'd either flipped it or did a cash out refi, held it in my
Mm-hmm.
portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Right now in my portfolio, I have an apartment building that I bought 5, 6 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been eating off that property for so long because the value consistently going up.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
appreciating every year. not to
Mm-hmm.
mention the short-term cash flow that I get every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these strategies that you have access to the capital, you get the money to be
Mm-hmm.
able to become your own bank and to be able to put money down that you don't necessarily have, right? And listen, I ain't even gonna talk about seller financing. I'm not gonna talk about the private lenders that you got access to where even if you have your own money, you become your own bank, you get
Right.
somebody else to be the bank, right?
Right.
OPM.
People's money. Let's talk about it, baby. Okay, so man, one thing that I really love that you said, right, is you're actually out there in the field. So what I'm loving about this conversation, dealing with you, is like what I said earlier. We're not bringing any rookies onto the Spill Street platform. You feel what Everybody we dealing with is outside for real.
Facts.
And I definitely got a good chance to look into the Investors Edge community. And what I can see, the initial method that you talked a little bit earlier, that y'all pretty much teach people who are coming in at the entry level, is becoming your own bank in real estate by way of wholesaling. So for those who have been interested in wholesale, and I'm bringing up wholesaling people for the people who want to get in it but feel like they don't have enough credit, they feel like they don't have enough money, but they really want to get involved.
Mhm.
And I'm telling y'all, this is one of the best ways to get involved. If you have nothing, right? So for those who've been interested in wholesaling, but perhaps never followed through for whatever reason, for the people, for the listeners, within the Investors Edge community, can you share a real life example or case study for someone in the Investors Edge community who successfully became their own a bank and real estate by way of wholesaling as an introductory into it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I always tell everybody this. So number one,
Mm-hmm.
I have a bunch of use cases of people that I've assisted. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of them are corporate workers, work a 9 to 5, and do this kind of on the side with my
Mm-hmm.
assistance. So first, let me explain what the Investors Edge community is all about. So
Mm-hmm.
number one, it's a community where I'm bringing in like-minded individuals, people that want to get into real estate, people that have been thinking about getting into real estate, people that need that guidance in order to curb all of the mistakes that you would potentially make in the beginning. And so
Mm-hmm.
the way that I have it built out is that it's for everybody. It's for people that's just getting started. It's for people that have a portfolio already that's trying to scale their portfolio. Because I also have experience in that as well. I've been investing for the last 7 years. I've probably been in 9 markets. I've owned
Mm-hmm.
properties in Virginia, Maryland, Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, Mississippi. You name it, I've owned it. So if you're looking to get in, even if you're in Florida, even if you were in California, you're looking to get in different markets, I teach you how to do that, right? How to wholesale virtually, how to invest virtually, how to become an out of state investor, right? So within the community, I have a lot of different courses that I teach, and it's basically you learning the foundation, because what happens a lot of the times is that people want to skip certain steps, right? You can't skip
Mm-hmm.
your foundational level, right? You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? That's like you going from graduating high school to getting your master's, and you're just gonna forget all about your bachelor's in between, and you expect to make the same amount of money that somebody else is making.
Facts.
And it don't
Facts.
typically work like that. And
Mm.
so the way that I have everything set up is that I have learning modules where it's like your traditional lecture type style on the computer. And then I have what we call practical exercises. So whatever I talked about during the learning stage, it reinforces it on the practical level. So it's actually hands on, do this, click here, open this. Let me show you how to do your LLC. Let me show you how to do your foreign entity request, all of that good stuff, right? So as it
Mm-hmm.
pertains to the people that's in my community and the people that I've helped, there's a lot of people. A lot of people went from wholesaling, and I teach them how to get the leads, what systems they need to use, what the people, the team that they need to hire, the type of questions that you answer. So a lot of people start off and they be like, okay, I can do this myself. Okay, cool. I tell everybody, do it yourself for like a month. You'll be completely burnt out, and then you'll start building your team. Where are your cold callers? Where are your acquisition manager? Where are your disposition manager? You know what I'm saying? Like, where are all these people that oversee your whole entire operation? Because that's how you're going to make money, and that's how you're going to scale. right? What
Mm,
systems do you need to use? People don't know. Okay, what is skip tracing? How do you skip trace? How do you find these leads? These are all the things that I talk about within my community to be able to do that. And then when they go from wholesaling and then they done built up enough cash, then they transition to something else. They might say, okay, I've wholesaled 5 properties. I got X amount of money now. So bet let me buy and hold something now, because that's how you build true wealth, is buying and holding. You
absolutely.
don't build wealth by wholesaling, and you don't build wealth by fixing and flipping. You only build wealth when you hold on to an asset, right? Because it's something that happens over time. But if you don't have the money, you can use these other methods, wholesaling and fixing and flipping, to get the money to then
Mm,
hold on to something. So the way
mm,
the way that I teach it is that I say, depending on your situation, I say, hey, you go through wholesale 2 properties, fix a property, and then hold on to one, or hold on to two, and then do that again, and you're repeating that cycle. And now you're generating your own cash flow to be able to put down on these properties.
I love it, man. I love it. So just kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. It's funny. I heard Ice Cube say something about like when he got in, and I know this is like I'm not trying to get off subject, ladies and
No,
gentlemen,
you
but
good.
it's a quote Ice Cube said that stuck with me no matter what I did after I heard this. He said, I think he was talking about the film industry. Cube, if you're watching this, shout out. You know, I'm not trying to mess up your words, but he said I believe he said when getting into the film industry, you want to know what not to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do something that you wasn't supposed to do, it could put you in a hole that's so deep that you may damn near not ever get out of, depending on what it is. And we see people, make a lot of mistakes when, they do things like what you said, try to go from high school to the masters.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it be wholesaling or independent cash purchase, what are some common mistakes people generally make in the fix and flip market when they come in, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah. So number one, I think the number one mistake that people make is that a lot of people think that they can go at it alone, right? And so
Mm,
no matter how many courses you read,
mm,
how many courses you watch, how many
mm,
books you read, no matter any of that, the only real true way to really get this information is being in the field. You have to put in the work, right? Because when somebody is teaching you or somebody is mentoring you, they're there so you don't make the mistakes, right? And
mm,
so whenever you encounter a problem that you don't know how to navigate, that's when the issues come up. And that's where having a mentor or a community of people is beneficial. You know what I'm saying? Like,
mm, mm,
that's how you pretty much mitigate that particular risk, is that you
mm,
have to join a community until you feel
mm,
comfortable and you doing a lot of deals and you closing a lot of deals. You talking to lenders, you talking to title companies, you talking to buyers, you talking to sellers. You know how to negotiate. You know how to run your numbers. You're not being pressured into taking on deals that don't make sense. When until you get to that level, you need to have somebody with you in order to do it. Right. So that's, to me,
right.
that's the biggest mistake that I've seen. And then
Yeah.
what happens is that those same people will go at it alone, then they get
Hmm.
stuck, and now they need your help, and then they end up
Yeah.
spending more money, time, and resources than they would if they just went to you the
Mm,
first place, right?
absolutely, man.
So
Yeah.
that is the number one mistake that I've seen people make. And I mean,
Hmm.
depending on the strategy that they're doing, they can also make a lot of other mistakes. One of the things that I'm going to touch on,
Hmm.
in terms of something that even I did when I first started, this was like my first year or two when I was
Right.
investing,
Right.
is that when I bought my apartment building, number one is that a lot of people be like, oh, okay, man, since you're doing residential X, Y, and Z, you only need
Hmm.
20% down, right?
Hmm.
So boom, imagine somebody saving up their money to finally buy them a property, put down 20%. Boom, I put down that 20%.
Hmm.
Then you're very ambitious and you like, yo, I want this apartment building. And the lender was
Hmm.
like, yeah, I got you, lender, I got you. So one of the things that happened to me when I first started,
Hmm.
my down payment went from a 20% to a 35% because it was based on the deal. right?
Okay, expound
Now,
on that. Not to cut you off, but expound on
mhm.
that for the people watching, because I've heard something similar like this happen before with a friend of mine, and I still to this day couldn't understand how the hell that happened to him.
Yeah, correct. So depending on the type of lenders you use, depending on what you go through, a lot of lenders not only do you have to have money in the bank,
Uh
not
huh.
only do you have to have a great credit score, you
Mm.
also got to have experience. So a lot of
Mm.
lenders, no matter how great your credit is, no matter what the numbers are on the property, they also look at experience. So at the
Right.
time, that was my first apartment building of that size. Everything else that I had done was single families, duplexes, and things of that nature. And so I
Right.
went from a single family home straight to a 12 unit apartment building, right?
Mm.
So from a lending and underwriting perspective, it's considered commercial because it's a commercial loan,
Right. Of course.
even
Yeah.
though it's
Okay. Mm.
residential. So now they looking at me and say, hey, you got a great credit score, you got money in the bank, but we're gonna need to up your amount because we're taking all the risk because you don't have the
Right.
experience
Okay.
to take down these type of properties. So I went from 20% to 35%. So
Damn.
imagine if I only saved that 20%. I couldn't even go through with the deal now because
Uh huh.
now they're requesting 35%,
Right.
right? And then
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, another thing that happens, which is another rookie mistake, is
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the times when you're signing your loan documents, nobody really truly read every sentence, every page. It's a lot of
Uh-huh.
fucking information,
Right,
right?
right,
And
right.
so what happens is that this particular lender that I was using didn't really disclose it. I specifically asked about it, but it wasn't disclosed. But dig deep into the paperwork, it was a prepayment penalty, right? So basically, what a prepayment penalty is that you're taking on a loan, and if you sell,
Uh-huh.
refinance within a certain time frame, you got to pay a percentage of the
Percentage
entire
that.
amount of
Mm-hmm.
that particular property. So when I acquired the property, it was never going to be a long term from that lender. It was always going to be short term,
Right.
right? And so within the first year, they charged me 5%. And so I still remember this to this day.
Mm-hmm.
When I refinanced, I had to pay an additional $35,000 on
Mm-hmm.
top of the origination fee, which is extremely expensive, on top of the fees that you have to pay, on
Mm-hmm.
top of all of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
these are just things that you may not know about if this is your first deal, your second deal, or your first deal of that caliber. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where having a mentor and somebody guiding you
Mm-hmm.
is really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I don't get mad at anybody that wants to go at it alone,
Right.
but just know if you tap me on the shoulder, it may cost you a little bit more because now I got to go back and undo everything that you've done and then correct everything.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, man, when you talk about the mentorship. It sounds like the mentorship is like really the key in a lot of different things. And even if you look at something like sports, sometimes I ask myself this, right? Okay, Jordan and Kobe. If we want to talk about sports a little bit, Jordan and Kobe, they both had Phil Jackson. And when you look at the Lakers before Phil Jackson got there, you ask yourself, okay, cool. This man, Phil Jackson, he has experience with knowing how to get six rings,
Correct.
and helping form a Michael Jordan. So I always stop and ask myself, especially when you look at the documentary, that Jordan and them had, and you related to the success that Shaq and Kobe with the Lakers had, would they really had gotten them rings without Phil Jackson's experience and leadership, that
Mm-hmm.
you was talking about, man. And another thing too that I want to touch on a little bit is risk management. With real estate, I feel like risk management is a super big thing that a lot of people overlook, especially when they quick to get on YouTube and just look at, a guru talk this and that, and they don't account, all of these other things that come into play. So I want to ask you, for the people who are, interested in, getting this thing rolling, how often can curveballs, and we done heard about a lot of different stories, from people
Mm-hmm.
who are out in the field and kind of got spooked and got back. We heard some stories, and I just want to ask you, man, from your experience, AB, how often can curveballs occur, such as things like dealing with janky contractors or not passing certain electrical building codes occur? And what are some general ways people can avoid curveballs like that may come up when we're talking about risk management?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, I tell everybody this is that there's no such thing as no risk, right?
Mm,
It's how do you mitigate the risk that's going to present itself.
mm,
So prior to being a real estate investor full time, I worked as a computer engineer,
mm,
right? And
mm,
so in the computer space, it's not if you're going to get compromised or hacked, it's
mm.
when, because
Ooh.
people are constantly at
Uh-huh.
your front door knocking, trying to get in, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you go look across all the major tech companies, Microsoft, AWS, Google, they probably get over a half a billion attacks a day, right? Probably more
Mm.
than that. So just imagine you having to protect yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Somebody is eventually going to get in because there are
Right.
certain things as 0 day attacks. I'm not going to get technical. I'm not going to get in there. I just wanted to emphasize the fact that no matter what industry you're in, there is no such thing as no risk. So that's number
Right.
one.
Mm-hmm.
So number two, risk like this happens all the time if you're not
Mm-hmm.
prepared, right? It's how you adapt and respond to something bad happening, such
Mm-hmm.
as a janky contract and things like that. So for me, what I do is that number one was the education. I
Mm-hmm.
had to make sure that I was educated on every piece of the puzzle, and I personally knew how to do everything from cold calling to acquisition to disposition to managing contractors,
Mm-hmm.
role and functions of a
Mm-hmm.
title company,
Mm-hmm.
the roles and function of a lender, all of the above. I had to make sure I knew that. Then I had to make sure that I did my own deals first. I can't read a book and go to YouTube and now thinking I can teach other people. What am I actually teaching them? I ain't even been in the trenches long enough to teach anybody anything. And then once I've got the education, once my mindset was where it needed to be at, once I learned everything specific to real estate, then I had to slowly build out my team, right? Because there's only so much that I can do. And I'm not scalable if I'm trying to do every single thing in my organization.
Right.
So I have checks and balances in place for everything that I do. Everything. Let me give you a specific example as it pertains to fix and flipping and managing and dealing with contractors, because
Mm-hmm.
every piece of the puzzle have to align for you to make money. If
Mm-hmm.
I evaluate a deal and I say, okay, the ARV is this number and it's really that number, there's things along the process that can still make you go from a good deal to a bad deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if the contractor came in over budget? What if he didn't finish on time? What if the
Right.
fees increased? There's a lot of things that can happen. So, what I do as it pertains to managing contractors, number one, I draft all of my contracts. That's number one. A lot of them have the same verbiage. I switch it up depending on which contractor I'm dealing with because I know that contractor. But another mistake that I did early on is that I allowed contractors to use religion and spiritual beings to kind of slide in to be like to have a commonality, right? Because most people believe in God and most people
Right.
know how they got in certain situations. So
Uh-huh.
they'll start talking about God, they'll start talking about X, Y, and Z. Next thing you
Right.
know, they trying to pull a fast one on you. So
Oh man.
when I
Uh-huh.
first started, one of the biggest mistakes that I made personally is that my draw schedule, I didn't really have a real true draw schedule in how I pay out my contractor. And then when I paid my contractor out, I paid him out based on his labor and materials. Well,
Mm-hmm.
everybody know when contractors, when you lump that up together, you don't know what's true labor and what you're actually paying for in material costs. So on the first go around, a contractor ended up stiffing me. I end up paying him $50,000 for a job that he didn't complete. And I will go on record to say that I did sue him and I successfully won. And I'm also in possession of
Hell
taking over
yeah.
his entire primary residence as
Oh
well.
hell yeah.
I don't
Get
play
his
games when
ass.
it comes to contracts. I don't play games when it comes down to documenting and making sure everything is lined up. So that's number one. So what I do now is that I only give, I only allow the contractors to give me a labor only quote. I pay for the materials out of my pocket. Now, the only time the contractor gets paid is when he actually do work because I'm paying for the materials. That way is that he has to show me that the work is done before he can even receive a payment. If I was lumping it all together, most contractors would be like, well, since it's labor and materials, I need to go get materials. I'm gonna need 25% up front. Some of them ask for 50% up front. Then I get the other 25% when I'm like halfway through, and then I get the last 25% when I'm ending. I don't do that. You only get paid once you've completed work. And I am very detailed in my scope of work. I have every single line item, and by that line item, I have a dollar amount. And we go through with a checklist. Is the roof done? Check. Is the flooring done? Check. Is the ceilings done? Check. Is the painting done? Check. So you're only getting paid whenever I'm checking this off, right? There's no advances. There's no upfront money because I'm paying for the material. So you don't need any upfront money. And then I only release the last 25% when he's done. So that's some of the things that I've implemented and done based on experience and based on dealing with contractors and managing that risk because you can end up losing a lot of money. You can find the perfect property. You can evaluate the perfect property. You can have the perfect lender. But if you have a contractor that you don't know how to manage, that comes in over budget and don't complete on time, that good deal just went like this to like that. Easy.
Man, I done heard a couple different stories about just a bad contractor situation, just totally just fucking up the whole shit. And man, like based on what you saying, fam, and this is for the people to like, take account to this as well. A lot of risk management, you got to get in it to know what to do the next time. Like for an example, like now how you go through that checklist,
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't go through that hassle, the first time you got involved with the first contractor that you dealt with, you wouldn't realize like, okay, this is the wisest strategy for me to go to. You're not
Mm-hmm.
getting paid until you do this. You're not getting paid until you do that. And man, and for all the contractors out there, man, don't play with AB. Don't play with AB, man. He will sue your ass to the
100%.
grass. Period. You did what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, I want to kind of get into like the legalities a little bit of pretty much making real estate your bank. So in some states and most states, there are different laws when it comes to certain practices of real estate. For an example, I know in some states you can't have more than one Airbnb property, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard of something similar to that. So for the people who have been on this journey of making real estate, of making money through their real estate and using real estate to become their own bank, what are some legal and regulatory considerations that you would consider people to look out for that may help them or potentially hurt them when it just comes to legalities of this thing?
So, in all honesty, what I try to do, so number one, I've got to put this
Mm-hmm.
disclaimer out there. I
Mm-hmm.
always try to refrain from not giving any type of legal advice on
Okay,
pretty much anything that I do. And it's only from a perspective of that
as you
when you say
should,
certain things,
as you
like,
should.
whenever you
Mm-hmm.
say certain things, people take that. And then
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't turn out the way that they wanted to turn out, now it's your fault.
Right.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I tell everybody is, and what I do for myself as well,
Mm-hmm.
is that if there's a law or something that was passed, don't take it from the person on YouTube. Don't take it from the person on social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's public. Go research it, download it, and see if you can read it and interpret what they actually mean. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can't, have your attorney to translate it for you. Because what happens a lot of the times is that there's case law that comes out, there's rules, and there's guidance that come down pertaining to real estate and all these other industries. And then there's some guru out there that'll read it and take a
Mm-hmm.
blurb on it and then
Mm-hmm.
tell you what they thought it meant. And it may not even necessarily be that,
Right.
right? You know what I'm saying? And so I always just kind of just stay away from that particular topic, only because people like to hold you accountable for the things that
Mm-hmm.
come out, and I'm not licensed, nor am I an attorney to be able to, you know, deal with that. But
Mm-hmm.
I will say that from a tax perspective and from a legal perspective, there are a lot of considerations that you need to take. Like some areas, they say, hey, you can't wholesale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wholesaling, or if you do
Yeah.
wholesale, you know there's stipulations to it. Well, there's ways around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know some people, like I have a friend that does wholesaling, and he's in an area that, you know, don't allow him to technically wholesale. So one of the ways that he uses to get around it is that he creates a new LLC for every property he's going to wholesale. And then instead
Mm-hmm.
of wholesaling and flipping the contract, he's selling his whole business. And the business just
Mm-hmm.
so happened to own the property,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know what I'm saying? So it's just certain
Can't
things
take
that
your
you can
business
do.
down, baby.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things that you can
Ah.
do, but that's why I pay my attorney a lot of money. That's why I pay my tax strategist and my accountant a lot of money, because we need to go through these scenarios. How can you save me money? How can I get around that? Because I'm a firm believer that every law, there's an exception to every rule.
Mm-hmm.
They're just what it
Okay.
is.
I love that, man. I definitely respect that answer. And I want to go back to something that we was talking about earlier, right? I said that we was going to come back around to the taxes thing.
Okay.
So how can people benefit from the tax implications that factor into making real estate become your own bank?
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward, right? You know, the laws that are currently in place really benefits a property owner from an investment perspective. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that for me, the depreciation taxes, right? You can go through, I can pretty much depreciate a lot of things on the properties that I own,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, my mortgage, my interest on my mortgage, I get to, you know, write that off. You know, any rehabs, any maintenance, anything of that nature, I get a chance to depreciate that. And that reduces my tax liability because of the amount of money that I make, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're taking a lot of taxes out of my check, or you know, when I was working a 9 to 5, I get most of that. I get most of, if not all of that money back. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from a tax perspective, it's definitely beneficial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I kind of tell you the same thing is that you know you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
always it's gonna always exist
Mm-hmm.
because it profits an entrepreneur. It profits
Mm-hmm.
somebody that invests in real estate. It profits somebody that own property and want to control property. So another thing that I want to mention to people that a lot of people don't even know about
Right.
is that most of the time we talk about, well, I don't want to deal with properties because I got this tenant, and if the tenant stop paying me, blah blah blah, X, Y, and Z. Like, okay, cool. Number
You heard
one,
it.
the number one thing that you should do, and what I do, one of my strategies is that I look at Section 8 first.
Uh,
So more than half of my tenants are Section 8, which I get the money up front. I don't have to worry about hunting them down and all that great stuff. Then there's another misconception about, you know, oh, well, it's Section 8 tenant. They're going to mess up my building. Well, listen, I've had more problems out of my non-Section 8 tenants than I have my Section 8 tenants because they are bound by certain rules and they want to stay on the program. If they want to stay on the program, they got to follow the rules. That's what it
uh,
is. They're not going to go trash something and they've been on Section 8 pretty much their entire life,
uh,
right? So now they're not going to jeopardize that, right? And so
uh,
what I was going to say was, as it pertains to collecting rent and getting what's owed to you, so
uh,
there's certain companies out there that will you pay monthly for it, and it's like like liability insurance. And underneath that insurance, they pay for a few things.
uh,
Let's say you evict somebody and somebody trash your place. Well, that's why they was paying liability insurance, and then that particular company covers up to $100,000,
uh,
and whatever claims that you put in, of somebody that
Mm-hmm.
messed up your flooring, somebody that tore your ceiling off, they didn't did this, they did that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
covered underneath that. And something
Mm-hmm.
very similar, and like your loss of rent, like you can go after people that have been
Mm-hmm.
evicted that owe you money. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
legal, like everything deals with legal system. You just have to be dedicated enough to go through the process to sit through, because it's not an overnight thing. You got to set a court date. You got to go to
Mm-hmm.
court. You got to present your case. Like I have clients that's going through this right now. You know what I'm saying? The tenant
Yeah.
got mad and then wanted to sue. Well, she was on Section 8, so they get free resources. So they get access to
Mm-hmm.
free attorneys. So
Mm-hmm.
now she got to prepare a case on a
Mm-hmm.
tenant because the tenant got mad and want their money back. Right? It
Mm-hmm.
happens. You just got to
Right.
know how to respond and react to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is, if there's a process for damn near everything as it pertains to
Mm-hmm.
real estate.
Absolutely. Man, it's funny, AB. It's crazy, man. I did not know how heavy you was or is in commercial real estate. Like I've been watching you for at least 4 years now, and we gonna have to do another episode on commercial real estate, dog, because I get down in that a little bit myself on the realtor side, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
we gonna have to come back on that, man. So, we've been touching on a lot throughout this interview. And we definitely, spoke about how, if you're starting this thing with nothing, wholesale may just be the best approach for you to come in as an introductory level. But for somebody who's been, I would say, in this thing for about 30 to 60 days, whether they've been coming in on the wholesale side or they are prepared to invest, and they're about 30 to 60 days in, looking for properties, haven't really came up on a good deal yet. What advice would you give to somebody who's about 30 to 60 days in the real estate investing right now?
Man, that's a really good question. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll use myself as an example,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and I think people, and I think through this interview, the theme has been the same in terms of mentorship or having somebody guide you. So I'll tell you what I personally did. So I was willing to spend a lot of money for mentorship. I was willing to spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of money to be taught the real estate game. But
Mm-hmm.
the reasons why I did it was slightly different than some people would think. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do it because I needed somebody to teach me how to invest, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
right? When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to formal education, when it comes to learning, I'm pretty good at it. The reason why I paid into all these memberships and mentorships is to get access to their resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're just getting started out, you're not going to know which lenders to go to, which one has the
Mm-hmm.
best deals. There's going to be different lenders for fix and flip. There's going to be certain lenders for
Mm-hmm.
buy and hold. There's going to be certain lenders for certain things. Then you have to learn and get access to people resources so you can find out who the players are, who are the good contractors, who can make stuff happen, who has a decent price. So this is what
Mm-hmm.
I was doing. And so one of the things that I'll tell people is that they got to get in the game, and they can't be um scared to make a decision. They
Mm-hmm.
can't be indecisive. They can't
Mm-hmm.
tiptoe around certain things and expect to thrive. It's okay if you make mistakes. That's
Mm-hmm.
where you learn your best lessons, is that the mistakes that you make. And so, we try to be perfect in everything as it pertains to our life. And we try to, of course, we're going to try to mitigate risk as much as possible. But somebody that just getting in the game, somebody that just starting out, they got to get their feet wet. Right.
Right.
And so what I did is that I paid that money to tag along with somebody that was super experienced. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I paid that money to work for other people and do certain things to learn the game, because as a person, when you first come in a game and you don't know a lot,
Mm-hmm.
the chances of somebody super successful working with you is going to be slim, because what is the benefit? And
Right.
so you got to be willing to trade your time for money. You got to be willing to put in time and get nothing in return other than the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because how else? if Bill Gates came to me right now and say, "Hey, you can shadow me, but I'm not going to pay you," I'll do it in my sleep because the
Mm-hmm.
information that he's going to give me is going to be worth any amount of money that he can pay me, right?
Facts.
And so when people coming into game, when they're new, partner with somebody, have somebody mentor you, work for free. Say, "Hey, I don't have the experience, I don't have the money, but I seen that you posted on Instagram that you're looking for an acquisition manager. I'm willing to work with you and learn the game until I get to a point where I'm ready to branch off on my own." Say less. You got to be able to provide value. That's
Absolutely.
the number one thing. Coming into the game, you got to be able to provide value, or nobody's going to take you serious because you have nothing else to offer other than your time. That's it.
I like it. I like it. So what you basically saying is you would have took the dinner with Jay-Z over the 500,000.
Well, 500,000 with the information that I know,
I'm
I'm
just
taking the
messing with you,
500.
man. I'm just
Hey,
fucking
look,
with you. I
hey,
just
look. The information that I know, I'm taking the 500,000 all day, and I'm flipping it 3 to 4 times.
right. No, but on the real though, man, you really said the right thing though, fam. So another thing I'm gonna add to that, to somebody who's about 30, 60 days in, if you dolo, stop and look for a team.
Mm-hmm.
Look into the Investors Edge community. And even if it's not the Investors Edge community, just stop and try to find a team that speaks your language because what AB is saying is actually right. Even for me, in the as a real estate professional, as a realtor, right? When I first came in as a realtor, I was kind of all over the place in different markets and didn't really know where to go, and I really didn't understand how to even go about real estate in general until I got with a team.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know which markets to go. I know which markets not to go to. And most importantly, I have a mentor that I can rely on when I need advice when dealing with a new client.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have got that far or been this confident if I wasn't on a team. And I feel like that relates to all forms of practices in the business of real estate. And even if you're not in the business of real estate, literally get on a team, whatever you're in, whether you're in tech, whether you're in stocks, no matter what you're doing, get with a team. That team is definitely going to keep you grounded, and that team is going to give you a resource, like what AB is saying, for you to get information that you really would have just, that would have been over your head, like a shower nozzle or something like that. And I want to touch a little bit more, man, on on long term planning. A lot of times when I'm talking to my clients, whether they are investor clients, looking to build wealth from real estate, within the fix and flip market or in the
Mm-hmm.
commercial industry, purchasing apartment complexes, or whether I'm talking to, just a standard, family that's looking to, purchase a home because they have small babies and, they really want to bring them up in a good neighborhood and create memories. I tell people no matter how you go about it in real estate, it's going to be a long term game, a long term plan. And I tell people all the time when it comes to like long term investing with real estate, no matter how you go about it, it takes strategy. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, like I almost tell people that you have to kind of relate it to life a little bit. If you want to live past 100 and still look like Pharrell or Angela Bassett, it's going to be some strategy with that. You got to figure out what to eat. You got to figure out what not to eat. You need to know how much sleep you need to be getting. And pretty much it's maintenance and strategy within this. And this is the same thing that applies to real estate. So, based on your coaching and expertise, how should someone plan their long term financial strategy on the road to becoming their own bank via real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I like to do is I like to reverse engineer everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I start from the end and then work my way backwards, right? So, in 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever it is, what do you want your life to look like? How much money do you want? Like very fine details. Okay, in 5 years, I want to be making $100,000 a month. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to be able to have the ability to retire. I want to buy, a G Wagon, whatever it is, right? So you list out all of these goals that you have, and then you like, okay, and you make them very detailed. Now, the next level to that is like, okay, what I do, I fix and flip, I wholesale, and then I have a rental portfolio. So, how many properties do I have to flip? How many do I have to wholesale? And how many do I have to keep in order to get to my end goal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on my last 6 deals that I wholesale, I average about $30,000, $40,000. So now I'm gonna say, okay, if I'm averaging $30,000 to $40,000 a wholesale deal, and it's taking me 20 days to get that, okay, I'm going to say, okay, I need X amount of wholesale deals per year. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
At on an average of this amount, this dollar amount. Then I go say, okay, now I'm looking at my rental portfolio. Okay, if I'm getting my rental portfolio and I have a 4 unit, and from that 4 unit, I'm getting $2,800 a month, and I'm cash flowing about 800. Like, okay, cool. If I had an 8 unit and I'm cash flowing 800, it'll tell me that I need X amount in order to have this amount. And so that's basically what I do. I just reverse engineer everything. I write down, and that's a key component of this as well. Writing it down, right? I have short term goals, long term goals. I have strategies that pay me out today. I have strategies that pay me out monthly. I have strategies that pay me out beyond a month, and I have things that pay me out beyond that time frame. And so when you structure your life like that, and how you invest in real estate, it feels like you're getting paid all the time because that's how you structure it. I'm not just waiting on the money from my monthly paychecks from my tenants when they pay their rent. I'm getting that monthly regardless. But then I need to throw in some wholesaling too, because
Yeah.
now I'm able to close deals within 15 days. You know what I'm saying? Oh, and then I need to work on something more long term, because now I'm getting the tax benefits. Now the lender's paying 100% of my rehab costs. Then I'm going to refi. I'm gonna pull the money out, and I'm gonna hold it as a rental.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get 10 of those. Let me get this. Let me get that. And that's going to equal my $100,000 a month, or whatever that number is that you want to do. So I reverse engineer everything depending on what I want my life to look like.
I like that too, man. And something else I want to touch on that you just said for the beginners, right? When you're looking at long term planning, write down what you want your original goal to be.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine once said everything goes back to the beginning. So like when you go back to that beginning, it's really going to keep you focused, and it's also going to make you realistic about your journey
Mm-hmm.
along the way of keeping up with that long-term strategy that's going to get you the goals and results that you want for real estate, whether you're coming into purchasing a property for your family to create memories, or whether you're going in as an investor looking to create generational wealth. Even if you are purchasing a property for your family to create memories, you still creating generational wealth,
Correct.
because now you're leaving something for your children's children to have
Mm-hmm.
behind. And that's just a default buy and hold right there. AB said in the beginning of this interview, ladies and gentlemen, buy and hold, and that's how you create the real wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So and also you teaching your children how valuable it is to purchase property, land, buy it, hold it. And that's how we catch up. That's how we catch up, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Facts.
So I want to go back, and we almost out of here, AB man.
Okay.
We've been turning up on this interview. We're gonna come back again with another one, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely, we definitely gonna come back with another one. But man, I want to go back to something you said about diversification. Right? I feel like diversification is a very, it can be either sticky, but at the same time, it can be very beautiful if you got control. So I want to ask you, right? How important would you say it is to diversify in multiple different markets, such as multifamily, single family, or even property management? Even if you wanted to dab in that, how important would you say that is?
It's extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I do is diversified, right? So The first level of my diversification is even with my resources that I use, right? I don't rely on one single thing to get me to where I want to be at, because if you do, that's what we call a single point of failure, right? You
Mm,
have that one straight line to that one person, and as soon as that person decides that they don't want to or can't, what do you do? Right. So in terms of my resources, when it comes to lenders, I have a lot of them that I deal with. Right. When it comes to title companies, I have different title companies that I deal with. When it comes to property management companies, I had that as well. And I had to start my own property management company because they all were shitty. Right.
yeah.
Like that's a whole nother podcast on property
Right.
management and how they
Right.
operate. They just as bad as some of the contractors I've dealt with. It is what it is. So so I had to start my own. The only way that I was going to actually be happy is to start my own. Did I want to
Right.
do it?
Right.
No, I didn't, but it was necessary. And I will also
Yeah.
tell people that if you don't have to start a property management company, don't, because the money isn't in the property management. The property management is more of like a what I consider customer or client success, right? You've done everything right, and then the last thing is for them to manage your property. It don't matter how well you did everything before then. If you have a shitty experience from a property management perspective, they'll be like, I don't even want to own properties anymore. I don't even want to,
Yeah.
have a rental portfolio, right?
Right.
So that's, to me, that's like the first level. Then I also diversify when it comes to the type of properties that I invest in, right? I invest in single family, duplexes, triplexes, 4 units, apartment buildings, all of the above. Then I also diversify in terms of locations. I think early on in an interview I mentioned I've owned properties in Mississippi, Virginia, Maryland, Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, all of these states, St. Louis, all of these different states. And every area has a different reason of why I'm there. You know what I'm saying? It's mainly all C class, but some areas I like to flip more than I like to wholesale, because a lot of areas are behind and they are going through of a gentrification process. A lot, just like in Baltimore. In Baltimore,
Right.
they were trying to give away properties because
Like a
they need
dollar
to.
or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I heard about that. That shit was
yeah.
crazy.
And I always tell people to really read what the stipulations are, because the dollar tagline is kind of the catchphrase to bring you in, but then it's like,
Uh,
oh, you can't be an investor, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, but it's still a good
uh,
opportunity because they need to
yeah.
stimulate the economy. They got to bring money. If they're not making money, that's a problem. And
Right.
so, in terms of diversification, it's extremely important. I diversify in everything that I do because, again, I don't want to have a single point of failure.
Okay, man. I definitely love that, bro. Diversification is definitely where you want to go, especially in real estate. And the only thing I want to add to that, ladies and gentlemen who are just getting started out, don't think you got to diversify, everything within the first year. The first year, get your single family game right. Second year, step it up to like a duplex. You may be stepping it up if you really grinding. You may can go from the single family market into the multifamily market within a duplex situation or a fourplex situation within the first year. Especially, man, if you join the Investors Edge community, getting game from
Yeah.
my brother AB, man, and just pretty much, tapping into your program a little bit more before we get out of here, AB. For the listeners who are experienced in real estate, and they kind of been on their lone wolf ish, and want to join your Investors Edge community program, where can they go and how can they join the program?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to abcashflow.com. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to take you to free training. You can take
Mm-hmm.
that free training. Within that free training, I have 3 ebooks that I give
Mm-hmm.
away for free within the training. And
Mm-hmm.
then pretty much you can join my community at
Mm-hmm.
abcashflow.com/offer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can join for as little as $97 a month, and it's giving away a lot of free game. We actually have our
Mm-hmm.
first meeting tomorrow with all the members of my community, and I'm super excited about it. And again, you're learning from somebody that's been in the field, been in the trenches, that's been doing it. This ain't some YouTube. I watched a YouTube video. Now I'm doing an interview about it. I
Uh-huh.
have so many more things that I can give you advice on. Some of the things
All right.
that I've done personally. I have mentees that have bought. I have a group, husband and wife. In the past year, they've bought. I've been able to get them 6 duplexes,
Mm,
right? And some of my mentees have bought properties and came out of pocket this amount of money, $0 out
mm,
of pocket, right? Matter of fact, at closing, they receive money back at closing, and they're the ones that's purchasing the
mm,
properties. So I got receipts, I got
mm,
HUD statements, I got closing documents,
mm-hmm,
whatever it is that you want to see, I got that. So definitely check me out, look me up. You can ask me questions. I'm on
mm.
Instagram at Antonio Buchanan _. I'm on LinkedIn with my full name, Antonio Buchanan. So yeah, feel free to hit me up and ask me whatever questions you need.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Spill Street Podcast. I've been watching AB since 2020. Like honestly, I can genuinely say AB is one of those. Although I came in on the real estate, excuse me, on the realtor side, initially, just looking at AB, just pretty much said, okay, this is the game that I want to be in, and this is where I want to see myself at. So I definitely wouldn't have him on here for no reason. I've been watching this brother get money in this game for a long time. This is definitely one of the programs that you want to be a part of, just like myself. Pretty much, man, AB, we're gonna have to run this back again, man.
Let's make it happen.
You shocked me with some shit today, man. Especially like we gonna have to come back in and do a couple more episodes commercial. We definitely gonna come back and talk to y'all a little bit more about property management. So
Mm-hmm.
stay tuned for that one. And before we go get out of here, AB, once again, man, I want to thank you, my brother. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate you, and you a real one, dog. I'm
I
talking about
appreciate it, brother.
for real, man. You a real one, fam. And also, I'm gonna drop the link in the description below to how to get into the Investors Edge community. Y'all can start on the free program training before y'all go into it if you're new and you want to see if it's for you. But most likely you gonna do it. It's just $97 a month. Y'all gonna get up in there. Y'all gonna get this bread. Y'all gonna laugh. Y'all gonna cry. And y'all gonna make history. But before we get up out of here, ladies and gentlemen, before you go, please hit the like and subscribe button if you really like this video. And you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, subscribe, help us get this information circulating out there to the people that need it. If you listen to this episode on Spotify, follow us on Spotify, Spill Street Podcast. Also, if you are in the Atlanta area and you need a realtor and you want me to represent you as your realtor, Michael Spill, go ahead and click the new buyers and sellers link in the description below. Also, leave your email and phone number. When you click on that new buyers and sellers link, I will get to you ASAP. And until next episode, ladies and gentlemen, you know the motto. Always remember to spread positivity, information, love, and light. We out. Peace.